Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hope y'all are doing well. Make sure my mic is on here. 1 2 1 2. Stream health questions, polls. Hope everybody is doing well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Okay, let's begin. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Salawatu rabbi wa salamuhu alayhi. Amma ba'd, hope all of you are doing well and staying healthy and staying indoors. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you all, and for all of our brothers and sisters who are out in the front lines, whether they are healthcare workers or essential workers, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide your footsteps and protect your health and protect you and your families and bring you home to your loved ones, having the combination of safety as well as ajr and reward. Allahumma ameen. So, that being said, today I want to actually just talk briefly about a favorite hadith of mine. One of my favorites, and it's a hadith that I think is really beautiful to take advantage of and to focus on as people are finding themselves with a lot of spare time, whether it's individuals or whether it's families. A lot of people are at home, and even if they simply have the free time of commuting, right, that time that they used to commute if they're working from home, it's freed them up a little bit, inshallah. And so the Prophet ﷺ in Muslim, hadith that's reported by Muslim, and it is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ mentions three things that are really powerful tools for success. No matter what you are trying to use this time to do, however you are trying to take advantage of this time, there are three things that the Prophet ﷺ directs us to. And they're very, very important that this is something that you're going to want to jot down. This is something that you're going to want to save. This is a hadith that I would encourage you to just always keep in mind, this formula. And he mentions, and I'll say the section of the hadith that I want to share. He says, "Ihris ala ma yanfa'uk, wasta'in billah, wa la ta'jaz." It's these three things. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Ihris ala ma yanfa'uk." Focus on what benefits you. Focus on what benefits you. And seek the help of Allah. And seek the help of Allah. And then he says, don't give up. These three things. So when a person is seeking out any goal, or even just starting out their own life, these are three things to keep in mind. Number one, focus on what benefits you. Right now, that you ask yourself the question, my days and nights, are they reflective of what benefits me? Are they reflective of my goals? Do I have goals in the first place? And if I don't have goals in the first place, then what am I doing with my life? There's a lot of times, the difference between having a goal in life and not having a goal in life. Having a destination that you're going to and not having a destination that you're going through. Not only that, but knowing the way to get to your destination. Completely different experiences. So for example, when you are driving somewhere that you know, one of your family members' houses, or your way to work, or your way home, or what have you, how do you drive? you're driving fast, right? You know that you're getting on 59 and then you're going off of 45, and you know that you're going on 610, and you know the routes very, very, you know the side streets, you know. The only thing that's stopping you are red lights, other traffic, right? But other than that, you're going at your own pace and you're going at the speed that you want. But when you're lost, when an exit is blocked and you don't have GPS, you don't have anything to guide you, how do people drive? Have you ever seen people drive in neighborhoods where they're looking for somebody's house, but they're not really sure where it is? You drive very, very slow. And some people go through life like that. They don't know where they're going and they don't know how to get there. And so they're driving through life really, really slow. But when the course is charted for you and you know how to get to where you want to go, you drive a lot faster, right? And so that's the importance of having goals. The Prophet ﷺ, however, he tells us and he says, focus on what benefits. احرص على ما ينفعك. Focus on what benefits you. That kaf is really, really powerful. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, focus on what benefits you. What benefits you, Latifat, is different than what benefits me. What benefits Ahmed is different than what benefits Amr. And what benefits Fatima is different than what benefits Zainab. Every single one of us, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, focus on the things that bring benefit to you. You know what? Maybe this program is wonderful for somebody else, right? Even something like this, a lecture like this, right? It might be something that's beneficial for some people. But for some others, they might find listening to an online lecture isn't really my thing. It doesn't really benefit me. I benefit more. I find my spirituality more in reading a page of the Quran, or in praying 2 rak'ahs, or in organizing some sort of food pantry for our brothers and sisters who are in need somewhere, right? There are some people who, for them, seeking knowledge is their path. For some people, serving others is their path. For some people, activism is their path. For some people, there is a lot of different paths out there. And Ibn al-Qayyim talks about this. When we say, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path, he says, the straight path is one, sirat, okay? Allah mentions one path. It's one, but the vehicles that we use to traverse down the straight path are many. So for some people, the vehicle that they will use will be fasting. And for some people, the vehicle that they will be using will be prayer. And for some people, the vehicle that they will be using will be sadaqah. They just love to give. They're always giving, right? That's where they find their iman. And so the Prophet ﷺ is saying, focus on what benefits you. And part of that ability to focus on what benefits you is for you to recognize where you don't find value, for you to recognize where you shouldn't be, and for you to have the confidence and the sincerity to be able to say to people who are trying to pull you in that direction, this is not for me. It's beautiful, it's blessed, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. I love your Sunday school, I love what you're doing at the masjid, I love what you're doing in this organization or that organization or this project or what have you, but this is not for me, so that I am not investing time of my life doing something that, and that's what Stephen Covey mentions in his book, the famous book, The 7 Highly Effective, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? And this is very powerful. He says that the enemy of the best is often the good. I want you to write that down. The enemy of the best is often the good, meaning the thing that many times stops us from being the best version of ourselves. It's not that we're sitting there like doing horrible things. It's that we are spending our time doing things which are good instead of doing that which is best. And so for me, maybe the best use of my time is actually being suffocated by me doing things that are good uses of my time. And so I have to be very, very selfish with myself. The Prophet ﷺ says, focus on what benefits you. And so I have to be able to recognize that, and I have to be able, this is a word that you need to be able to learn. Incredibly important word. You need to be able to include this in your vocabulary. Should be one of your goals of 2020. And that word is no. No, I'm sorry, I can't. I can't do this. And I can't do that. And I can't come here. And I would love to be able to be there for you in this, but I can't because I've figured out what my goals are and now I am focusing on it. Focus means to what? By definition, focus means that I am separating and I am zooming in on one thing at the expense of other things. I have to be able to, and I'll never forget, I always mention this story, but it is a very profound story for me. Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif, Hafidhullah, one time I was in a class of his, and he told me, or he told the class, there was a sister who was asking him, and she said, you know, Sheikh, sometimes I just find myself exhausted in my community. She was from somewhere else, and she was exhausted in her community because she was one of those sisters who was just involved in everything. She had her hand in every pot. She was an excellent worker, excellent volunteer, and so every organization and every program, she was high on everybody's list, and she would not be able to say no. And say she finds herself teaching in the Sunday school, and she finds herself cooking in the soup kitchen, and she finds herself organizing the after school program, and she finds herself doing everything. She's got a hand in everything. And she's like, I just feel exhausted and consumed. And you know what happens when you're like that? Your own spirituality starts to suffer because you're not feeding it. You're not praying anymore. Even your prayers are rushed. And so she said, and then he said to her, and I don't think she was expecting to hear that. He said, if you have a problem saying no, if a person, not you in particular, but if a person has a problem saying no, then I would think that they actually have a problem in their ikhlas, in their sincerity. Man, nobody was expecting that. But he then kind of, he gave perspective, and he said, if you're not saying no, even though there is something that is a more beneficial use of your time. That beneficial use of your time, by the way, could be you simply sitting at home and having a conversation with your teenager, right? And developing that relationship. That better use of your time may be you sitting at home or you going over to your mom's house and talking about absolutely nothing, right? And just massaging her feet. Muhammad ibn al-Munkadir, he says, my brother spent and he was one of the great scholars of the Tabi'een, the second generation. He said, my brother spent the night praying Qiyamul Layl, and I spent the night massaging the feet of my mother, and I would not trade my night for his. He spent the night in Qiyamul Layl praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who knows how much of the Quran he recited. I spent the night just massaging my mom's feet. I wouldn't trade my night for his. Right? And so me figuring out and if I have the inability to say no to anybody all the time, then the question becomes, why? Who am I trying to please? Because if I am not doing it because I'm trying to please people, then that means that I have shared that audience with the only audience who I should be worried about pleasing. And that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, if my goal is to please Allah, then I should be willing to say no to anybody else who impedes in that goal in any way. Even if it's not a complete impediment. Even if it's just this use of my time would be more beloved to Allah. Because fiqh, and to go back to Stephen Covey's quote, fiqh, the fuqaha say what? Fiqh is not being able to distinguish, understanding, is not being able to distinguish between the bad and the good. That's not fiqh. That's common sense. Everybody should be able to distinguish between the bad and the good. But fiqh is being able to recognize between two good things what is better, and between two bad things what is worse. That's really where fiqh comes to life. That's the person who has understanding of the religion, the person who knows between two amazing things, which one is more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala though? And between two horrible things, which one is worse and which one is more dangerous? Right? Being able to make that distinguishment. So, the Prophet ﷺ says, focus on what benefits you. Focus on what benefits you. And you know, the scholars, they've discussed which occupation is best. Which occupation is best? Is it to be a farmer? Is that the best occupation? Is it to be a merchant, a business person? Is that the best occupation? Is it to be a craftsman, right? To make something with your own hands? Is that the best occupation? And they argued these things. Some of them, they said craftsmen. Why? Because the best risk, the best ujra, the best compensation is for what your own hands have made, right? And the Prophet ﷺ praised that is the best source of sustenance, what your own hands have done. Others, they said farmers. Why? Because a farmer's heart will always be attached to Allah, because they are dependent on something that is absolutely beyond themselves. They are dependent on rain. And so that person's heart, that's why we have Salatul Istisqa. When my world revolves around me going to an office and then me going to Whole Foods, that's why you have atheism doesn't grow in societies that are rural and societies that are built on agriculture, because all of those societies will have some sort of invocation for the rain, or some sort of rain dance, or some sort of rain prayer, or some sort of... Others, they said, the merchant, because the absolute benefit that they bring. Look at the benefit that commerce. Look around in your room right now, in your living room, or wherever you are right now. Everything around you has been facilitated by commerce. Someone thought that they were going to make a profit out of this item, and so they sold it, and then you purchased it, and it moves the entire world. And then other scholars, they said, and this is the point here, and this is what Imam al-Sa'di mentions, and he says that al-fasilu bayna dhalika kullih, what distinguishes and what divides and what judges between all of this is really this hadith. This hadith is what judges over that entire argument. Focus on what benefits you. For some people, farming might be the best occupation, and for some people, being a doctor might be the best occupation, for some people, being an engineer, and for some people, being an artist, and for some people, be a craftsman, and for some people, being... Focus on what benefits you. The Prophet ﷺ says, focus on what benefits you. Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas was one of the greatest scholars, if not the greatest scholar of tafsir that the Ummah has ever seen, Turjaman al-Quran. He is the interpreter of the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him. Ibn Abbas is the cousin of the Prophet. He's the son of Al-Abbas, who's the brother of Abdullah, the father of Rasulullah. He's his first cousin. And Ibn Abbas was a kid when the Prophet ﷺ passed away. He was around 12 or 13 years old. And before the Prophet ﷺ passed away, of course, Ibn Abbas was in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ, he made dua for Ibn Abbas to have knowledge of the religion, to give him understanding. Fiqh. Fiqh means understanding. He says, فَقِهُ فِي الدِّينِ وَعَلِّمْهُ التَّأْوِيلِ. He asked Allah to give him understanding of the religion and to teach him the interpretation of the book. Ibn Abbas, the Prophet dies, he's 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old. Ibn Abbas has a goal now, because he's so perceptive and he's so intelligent and he's so wise. Even as a young kid, he realizes that, you know what? The Prophet ﷺ has passed away, and he's just part of that elder generation. That means that elder generation is going to pass away as well. And so he tells one of his friends, another teenage kid from the Ansar, from the people of Medina, and he says, why don't we go out and learn from the elders, from the senior companions? Let's go and ask them and take advantage of them while they're still here. And so that kid, he didn't have that vision, and he didn't see what Ibn Abbas meant. And so he said, Ibn Abbas, do you think that anybody cares what you know? Like, you a scholar now? Oh, big. You think anybody will ever look at you and care about what you have to say? Do you know there's Abu Bakr here, and there's Umar, and there's Uthman, and there's Talha ibn Ubayd, and Zubayr ibn Abu Ubayd, like all of these great senior companions. You think anybody cares what you and I know? And so sometimes when you have a goal for yourself, the people around you aren't going to applaud you and laud you and say, how can I help you? And let's do this together, and let's form a tribe around you and support you and fund you. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes people will impede you. Sometimes people will mock you. And so what does Ibn Abbas do? He makes a decision that is incredibly important. He says, فَتَرَكْتُهُ. I left him. And I went on my own. And he spent days in front of the houses of the companions. And he wouldn't even knock on their doors. And he would wait for them to just naturally come out of their homes. And then he would ask them about this hadith or this verse of the Quran, or tell me about this moment and tell me about this and that, over days and days and days that would turn into weeks, that turned into months, that turned into years. And when decades had passed, and Ibn Abbas is on this journey, Abdullah ibn Abbas, when those senior companions did pass away, they were looking for who would be the next person. When the ummah turned around and said, okay, well, the seniors have passed, who are those who are qualified to carry us now? Who's going to lead us now? Who's going to teach us now? They found that the ones who were most qualified and most ready, Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar and Aisha bint Abi Bakr, al-Mu'mineen radiyallahu anha, Abu Huraira, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, these young companions who had grown up absorbing the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would become the most prolific narrators of hadith, and they would be the individuals who taught the ummah. And Abdullah ibn Abbas says himself that when he was sitting once and he had this vast crowd in front of him, all learning from him, and now he's the senior in the ummah. He said, my young friend from the Ansar saw me. He came and he saw my gathering, and he said he noticed and realized something that I never realized. And so he accomplished what I didn't accomplish. So sometimes you have to be able to walk towards that vision on your own. And you have to be comfortable doing that. But you have to, number one, focus on what benefits you. The Prophet ﷺ says that's step number one. Focus on what benefits you. And then number two, he says, وَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Seek the help of Allah. And this we do not find. This is what you're not going to find in any of these self-help books. You're not going to find it in the development section at Barnes & Noble's, your local library. This is incredibly important, and this is for us. And we ourselves cannot lose sight of this. This is, as Muslims, we cannot lose sight of this. The Prophet ﷺ says, seek the help of Allah. Seek the help of Allah. You have some people who they focus so much on the dunyawi sense of things, the means of things, and they forget that the most important factor in the equation is whether Allah wills it or not. مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ كَانَ وَمَا لَمْ يَشَأْ لَمْ يَكُنْ. If Allah wills something, it will happen. And if Allah does not will something, then it's not going to happen. And so, seeking Allah's help. Yes, you don't want to be someone who seeks Allah's help without putting in the work. You have to put in the work. But you also have to make sure that you don't just put in the work and not rely on Allah. There are some people, for the students who are listening right now, there are some people who they study and study and study. They don't make dua. They don't pray for tawfiq. They don't pray for success. They don't invoke Allah at all. They just completely rely 100% on their hard work and their studying. And that's imbalanced. And then there are some people who don't study at all. They don't put in any of the work. And then 2 days before the exam, they're like, oh, gotta start praying Qiyamul Layl. They pray their 5, and then they pray in Qiyamul Layl, and they're begging, and the night before the exam, they're crying to Allah, oh Allah, please show us your greatness and show us your, right? But that's also incorrect. True tawakkul, true reliance on Allah is the balance of these two things, the harmony of these two things. You are putting in all of the effort. You are putting in 100% effort. But included in that effort, including in your steps to success, is the invocation of Allah, is the imploring of Allah, is the begging of Allah. And so the Prophet ﷺ says, seek the help of Allah. And right now, with COVID and the coronavirus, it is incredibly important that we remember seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. And how do we seek Allah's help? We seek Allah's help by protecting ourselves first and foremost with the adhkar, dua. So you seek Allah's help by, in the morning, the Prophet ﷺ tells us And these things, by the way, are things that we should be teaching ourselves. This is the time to learn it, developing these habits. If I haven't developed them yet, teaching them with my family members, having them recite it together every single morning and every single evening. These adhkar, these remembrances that we make. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that whoever says in the morning and in the evening 3 times, Bismillah alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wala fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. In the name of Allah, who does not allow for any harm to occur alongside the mentioning of his name in the heavens or the earth. And he is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. Okay? This dhikr is something that we should make 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that whoever says قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening, they will not be harmed. So that's something else. Okay, now the Prophet ﷺ, he says that whoever says and recites Ayatul Kursi at night will be protected until the morning. The Prophet ﷺ says that whoever recites the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah in a night, in an evening, kafatah, they suffice that person. Suffice that person from what? The scholars, they said, suffice that individual from every evil. And so these remembrances are incredibly powerful and more. And what I would encourage you all to do to develop, if someone hasn't developed it yet, every morning just go online, you'll find a million of these Adhkar al-Sabah, Adhkar al-Masa videos. Remembrances of the morning and remembrances of the evening. Okay? And what I like to do is قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِالْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِالنَّاسِ. I just kind of recite them myself in the morning and Ayatul Kursi. Just really, that's just automatic. And then what I'll do is, so for me, I will just play the rest of them on high speed. YouTube allows for you to play on high speed. If you didn't know that, then figure that out, and that would be my gift to you, because it's going to change your life. That's enough of a value for joining the session if you didn't know that YouTube plays on high speed. And so you just put it on 2 times the speed. It's probably 12 minutes. You listen to it in 6 and just repeat after what they're saying, right? Every morning. And you do the same in the evening as well. You do that, and every single morning and every single evening, 6 minutes, 10 minutes time maximum. But what is that to spend to protect you for that evening and protect you for that entire day? Okay? The adhkar of the sabah and the adhkar of the misa. And the Prophet ﷺ says, seek the help of Allah. Al-isti'ana. Isti'ana. What is isti'ana? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ. You alone do we worship, and you alone do we seek for help. I am seeking Allah's support, and I am seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help in whatever it is that I am trying to do, because I recognize وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ, that my success is not from except by Allah. Dr. Ayman al-Suwaid. Dr. Ayman al-Suwaid is, until today, considered one of the greatest scholars of the Quran, the recitation of the Quran. He's just a master, worldwide authority. And I remember once listening to him talk about the memorization of the Quran. And he said, there is no doubt that to be able to memorize the Quran, it must come with incredible invocation of Allah. It must come with incredible invocation of Allah. It must come with incredible asking of Allah. And then he puts forward a challenge. And he says, if you think that you can simply rely on, oh, I have photographic memory, or oh, I'm just really intelligent, or oh, I'm really disciplined, or, he says, then go and try to memorize it. Like, I dare you. And that, for me, was very profound, because here you have one of the greatest authorities in the Quran saying you won't be able to do it without Allah's help. It's not something that you can do. And so I recognize this concept, and not just applying it to memorizing the Quran, but really everything in my life, my career, my job, my more, and that's why these adhkar are so important, because of these adhkar that you make in the morning. And again, when we go to these self-help books, what do they talk about? They're not going to talk to you about invoking Allah, but they talk about the importance of having daily affirmations, that you anchor your morning with some sort of meditation, or that you make affirmations to yourself and you say, I am awesome, and I am amazing, and I am. But for us, we have the perfection of this. It's been gifted to us. Signed, sealed, delivered, packaged, all of that ready. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in the mornings we do not talk about our own greatness. In fact, we do the opposite. We talk about our weakness. We talk about our inability. And we talk about Allah's greatness. We say, Allahumma inni as'aluka khayra hadha al-yawm, fathahu wa nasrahu wa nurahu wa barakatahu wa hudah. Oh Allah, I ask you for the goodness of this day. I ask you for the best of this day. This Friday, tomorrow, this Saturday that I live to see, I ask you for the best of it. It's fath, it's victories, it's nasr, it's support, it's light, it's nur, it's guidance, it's huda, and it's barakah, it's blessings. I want you for all of the victories, what we would say now, all of the wins. All of the wins that I can get today, give it to me. All of the support I can get today, give it to me. All of the success I can get, all of the guidance, all of the blessings, give me all of that. I am asking Allah, and Allah's power, is perfect. So I'm not, you know what, I'm weak, I'm unable. And one of my favorite stories that I always tell people as well is Dr. Abdurrahman al-Sumayt. Okay? Dr. Abdurrahman al-Sumayt, right over here. Laptop is working. You can... Dr. Abdurrahman al-Sumayt is one of the great humanitarians of this ummah over the past 100 years. Dr. Abdurrahman al-Sumayt is when we talk about seeking the help of Allah and recognizing this, Dr. Abdurrahman al-Sumayt is a Kuwaiti who passed away recently. May Allah have mercy on him. He had traveled to Canada to do either for university or for medical school. And this is 40 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, but a long time ago. And he mentions that when he was involved in his MSA there, his Muslim student organization, they would receive brochures about poverty in Africa and poverty. And when he graduated, he took a humanitarian trip to sub-Saharan Africa. And he ended up at a crossroads. Does he go to Kuwait and live there and he's Kuwaiti, he would live a very luxurious, a very comfortable life, especially being a doctor there. His life was set. Or does he put his money where his mouth is, and does he go and serve these communities that are in such need? And he ended up doing that. And he would devote the rest of his life doing humanitarian work in sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm not talking about major cities. We're talking about random villages and towns, and from one place to another, and dealing with all sorts of diseases and all sorts of poverty. And really, but what was his life's work? What was his life's work? You can Google this yourself. I'm sure you'll find the images. This man, may Allah have mercy on him, when he passed away, the amount of institutions that he built were just incredible. The schools, dozens of schools, a number of universities, I believe it's like 4 or 5 hospitals, okay? Thousands of wells, the amount of people who converted to Islam at his hands, millions and millions of people. I think it was 3 or 4 million people over his lifetime. And he's doing all of this away from the cameras, away from the lights. There's no YouTube channel for him. There's nothing. And all he's doing is doing that work. And he talks about many times he had purchased a grave for him and his wife in Madagascar. Like they just at some, they had incredible, you can imagine everybody gets sick, right? But he's getting sick in these random villages and towns, and many times thought he was going to die. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destines for his story to eventually be known. But my point here that I want you to know, and I always find his interviews incredibly inspiring. I would encourage you to look them up if some of them are translated or transcribed. But he says, I never used all of this work that he's doing. He says, I never used to ask Allah for a lighter load. Never. All of these people depending on him, all of these services that he's bringing to thousands and thousands of people, this incredible work, this burden that he's carrying, he says, I never used to ask Allah for a lighter load. I always used to ask Allah for a stronger back. I always used to ask Allah for a stronger back. And that is, when we say this statement, and this statement that I'm about to tell you now, excuse me, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That's what that means. I have no source of hawl, transformation, wa la quwwa, or power, except by Allah. I do not have strength. I'm weak, I'm fragile, oh Allah, I'm broken, I am useless. I do not rely on my own power at all. Ya Rab, you be my source of power. You be my source of power. I can't transform myself into anything. I give up. I have no... You transform me. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That's why when we hear the adhan and the muadhin is saying hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we hear that part of the adhan again soon. He says hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, come to the prayer, come to success. What do we say? We say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I can't come to the prayer and I can't come to success. I can't come to any success if you, Allah, do not give me the strength and the power to come to success. I cannot come to any prayer. I can't do anything of my own accord. If you don't give me the power and the ability to come to the prayer. Okay? And so asking Allah, the Prophet ﷺ says, وَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. And number 3, and that's the importance of dua as well. Dua, the secret and the power of dua is that you are taking whatever that issue is that you are asking Allah for, whatever this issue is, this marriage of mine, this relationship of mine, this problem of mine, these finances of mine, this health of mine, whatever it is, and I am saying, oh Allah, I am transforming it from my power and my ability, which is incredibly limited, to the power and the ability of Allah, which is perfect. Here, oh Allah, this issue, I don't want to deal with it anymore. This is yours. When I am asking Allah, that is what I'm doing. And so ask Allah. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, وَلَا تَعْجَزْ. The third part, and I'm going to end briefly inshallah ta'ala so that we can get to any questions before we wrap up. But if you have any questions, please type them into the comments and we'll get to it. But the third, he says, وَلَا تَعْجَزْ, and do not give up. Do not give up. There is a book, even before we get to the book, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ, in a variation of the hadith of Ibn Abbas, which is reported by Tirmidhi. You know the famous hadith of Ibn Abbas where the Prophet ﷺ is asked, or he tells Ibn Abbas, preserve the commandments of Allah and Allah will preserve you. The same Ibn Abbas that we talked about at the beginning. Ibn Abbas, he said to him, preserve the commandments of Allah and Allah will preserve you. Preserve the commandments of Allah and you will find Allah with you. In a variation of this hadith, he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ, and know that victory comes with this word, sabr. What does sabr mean? Sabr is generally translated as patience. Obviously, it is much richer than simply that word. Patience, to me, has a connotation of passivity, that you're being passive, you're just kind of being patient. But sabr includes a lot of other words as well, such as perseverance. So it is persevering through something, it is enduring, it is sabr. Perseverance, endurance, grit. You just kind of push through something. That's sabr. And so the Prophet ﷺ says, know that sabr, that victory, comes with this quality. It comes with patience. There was a famous Arab warrior whose name was Antar bin Shaddad. He never lost a battle. Antar bin Shaddad is, until today, he's known as like this, like, you know how like for us you talk about like Hercules, like that type of strength. Antar bin Shaddad is like that. He is, you know, the strength of Antar, the ferocity of Antar, like that. He never lost a battle. And one person asked him, he said, how come you never lost a battle? Like, what is it about you? Why you've never lost? Antar told him, he said, let me show you. He said, okay. He said, you put your finger in my mouth, and I'll put my finger, you put your finger in my mouth, and I'll put my finger in your mouth. And let's both of us bite as hard as we can. Cool? The guy goes, okay. By the way, sisters, this is what guys do when there's no sisters around. This is. So he says, he bit. And the guy is like, the guy's like chewing my finger. Antar is like, and he's holding on, and the pain is unbearable, and he's holding on, and he's holding on, and he's holding on, until finally he says, Antar held on, and the guy eventually, he just let go. He said he just couldn't bear the pain anymore. And so Antar told him, and he said, you know what? After they were done, he said, I was this close to letting go, but I just decided to hold on a little bit more, and then you let go. And that's why I never lost a battle. He's saying, the reason why I never lost a battle is I just outlast the other person. Whoever my enemy is, I outlast them. And so I never lose. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says at the end of Surah Al Imran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu wasbiru wasabiru warabitu wattaqullaha la'allakum tuflihun. Allah says, oh, you who believe, isbiru, endure. It's not just be patient, but it's to endure, it's to persevere. Wasabiru, and out endure each other. What Antar is doing here, musabara, that I am out persevering, I am outlasting the other individual. Warabitu, and hold fast. Wattaqullah, and have taqwa of Allah, that you may be successful. I mean, this notion, it is hard to emphasize how important endurance is, and patience is, and perseverance is in a person's success. This being a key to success. In fact, there's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. Grit. Grit. And she's a University of Pennsylvania psychology professor. And she did a lot of research on this particular topic because she was a high school teacher, and she became very interested in how come the students who at the beginning of the semester, she noticed their intelligence and she noticed their talent, and she thought that they would be the ones who would be the highest scorers by the end of the semester. They weren't actually the ones who did the best academically. And there would be other kids who may not have been as talented, but they did better. And so that kind of set her on a path, and she went and she studied West Point students who were coming in, cadets who were coming in to West Point, of course, the famous military academy. And, you know, they were very interested, of course, in being able to distinguish what are the qualities that would make a good student, what would be qualities that would make a good soldier in the future, so that they could actually be able to qualify those students, you know, and kind of be able to weed out the students who didn't have those. Because if it's not IQ, then what is it? If it's not your SAT scores, then what is it? And so her conclusion was what her book is titled, which is Grit. That the quality that made people successful, and maybe we've all heard this anecdotally, we've learned this a lot from people who are successful, and they talk about this importance of this concept, but she creates it in this book. And I would encourage someone to look at it summary, or to read the book if they want, or to look at her, you know, talks that she's given. But the idea is very straightforward, and that is that the people who are successful are the people who have this quality of grit, that they're able to break down a larger goal into smaller parts, and they're able to show up every single day and not be distracted and not be overwhelmed, even though they don't feel like doing it, even though they don't want to do it, even though they're not distracted by a million other things that are happening in life, and they show up every single day until they accomplish the success that they had set out for. Grit. They grit their teeth and they go to work. They grit their teeth and they show up. It's not going to be fun every day. It's not going to be enjoyable every day, but they endure. They persevere until they get to where they are going. The Prophet ﷺ says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ, and know that victory comes with sabr. And Ibn Taymiyyah, he says, and know that nobody has ever achieved anything noble, a prophet or anyone less than them, except with sabr, except with perseverance, endurance, patience, resilience. And so these three things. And that's why we find, by the way, the Prophet ﷺ says, focus on what benefits you. Number 2, seek the help of Allah. And number 3, don't give up. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. Allah says, seek help in what? In patience and prayer. You wanna be successful in something? Seek help in what? Patience, endurance, perseverance, and prayer. Prayer is what? Seeking the help of Allah. It is connecting with Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And Allah says, seek help in patience and prayer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اصْبِرُوا وَصَابِرُوا وَرَابِطُوا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, the verse that we mentioned earlier. These things are paired in the Quran. Patience, prayer, patience and taqwa. Why? Because these are two incredibly important ingredients to achieving anything. Figure it out what you want, endure on your way to getting there, and seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the way. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa Muhammad. We end here. Jazakumullahu khairan. If there are any comments or questions or anything like that, otherwise I hope you are all doing very, very well, healthy, rested as best as we can, as well as getting to know our family members maybe a little bit too much. I do want to mention two works that we've released recently that you can take advantage of on the topic of dhikr and dua. And number one, and they're both through Al-Maghrib Institute. One of them is a book called 10 Ways to Protect Yourself from Plague. 10 Steps to Protecting Yourself from Plague. So if you just Google that, 10 Ways to Protect Yourself from Plague through Al-Maghrib Institute, you'll find an ebook as well as an audio book, as well as a video that we just released on our YouTube channel this morning. And the other is, let me look that one up, because this was a more thorough actually research on fiqh matters, and this is also an ebook that we've released. Let me pull that up here. Let's see. So I'm going to type in the web address for those that would like to get this ebook, almaghrib.org.online rather, /COVID-19 rulings. So this is an ebook as well that you can get. Otherwise, jazakumullah khair everybody. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi kathira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.